Good people, gotta love to see it. Corsair actually kind of cooked here. So this is the new Frame 4000 enclosure from Corsair. They've done some modifications on the interior. They've improved on a lot of quality of life things, like making the slight notches on the side panels slightly beefier so they don't bend as easily. The side panels are also, to me at least, feel a little bit thicker and not bending like pieces of paper like they did on the previous Frame 4000. So what Corsair is trying to do here with the Frame series is to introduce this whole modular approach, letting users customize the exterior pieces, the interior pieces, some functionality elements versus visual elements. And I think this initial rollout of modules is pretty strong, although not without its issues, both in terms of compatibility and their configurator. I'm all in on this idea of letting us customize the interior pieces from functionality and exterior pieces for visual showcase elements, but there's just one big flaw. Corsair has to get the price point absolutely right because people are going to vote with their wallets, and you're not going to spend $100 on the mid tower only then to spend $100 on modules. Like, that makes no sense. So let's see how they did, shall we? I really like what Corsair is doing with their wood integration. So we have the lighter oak and the darker walnut. So this is for the white model, this is for the black. And aside from now not having veneer, like this is complete wood throughout. This is not just like a piece of plywood with a veneer sticker on top. This is full thick wood and it feels quite dense. It feels nice and strong. There's no flexing on it, but the design is the selling factor here with this like drop effect, where we have the little waves coming throughout the entire front panel. It looks really cool and way nicer in person than what I've seen on renders. But of course, there's also the standard pieces of wood that are not wavy. That's also an option. There's always gonna be some variations in terms of the texture and the grain, which is kind of the whole selling point of wooden cases. We have a few more interesting front panel options. So this is what they call pixel glass, and it looks absolutely incredible. You can see when objects are kind of further behind the glass, they create these pixels, and as you get a bit closer, you can actually see the object. So this is both available in white and black, of course. This is actually super trippy, but man, what a brilliant idea and an amazing execution. This actually looks pixelated for the objects behind it. So cool. Then there's the RGB Flow panel. So standard plastic with these translucent pieces that are going to illuminate, and obviously it is completely open for best possible airflow. It also comes with this fine performance mesh dust filter that's going to be really good for airflow and dust capture. Then we have the RapidRoute 2.0 motherboard tray. It's steel. It still feels quite sturdy. The main selling point here are all these cutouts in the back that allows you to install clips for, you know, very customizable cable routing. Included with this tray are these 4 Velcro brackets. They are nice because the actual Velcro is long enough so that if you want to pass something underneath the main Velcro for something that's a bit more permanent, that doesn't need to be accessed all the time, you can, but the Velcro has enough length to secure like a chunky cable right on top of there too. We also have these 4 clips that will complement cable routing in a way that allows you to just kind of anchor some of the cables on there and work with the Velcros to really fine tune your cable management. And obviously, because of the whole grid system, they can be installed in vertical orientation or for horizontal cable routing. And we do have these plastic pins that you would install in the center. That extends the piece on the opposite side so the brackets don't simply come out. The biggest flex with the Elite motherboard tray is the build quality. It's one single piece of aluminum that's been machined and it's super nice to touch. The build quality is phenomenal, but it's $80 on a $100 enclosure, so that makes no sense. It can turn into a bench table apparently with some 3D printed parts, but you have to do that yourself. Corsair doesn't give you those parts. Also, only the original motherboard tray supports the included SSD caddy for some storage, because both the Route 2.0 and the Elite motherboard trays, well, first of all, the Elite doesn't have any slots for SSD caddies, so SSD caddies are not supported. But here on the RapidRoute, you have little cutouts, but they don't actually align with the included SSD caddy, which is really, really bizarre. Also in the configurator right now, they don't tell you that you lose SSD compatibility. Corsair. Like if this came with a fancy GPU bracket, for example, that would make a little bit more sense, but $80 for a little tray that just goes behind the motherboard makes no sense. Now these two are our I/O options. The top one is the default one, dual USB A's at 5 gigabits per second, one fast USB-C at 20 gigabits per second with your standard power button, while the Elite replaces the USB-A ports with USB-C, but keeping all the speeds the same, which is not that elite. But the killer trick here is this mechanical switch power button. It is RGB illuminated and it's also hot swappable. Kind of cool, but also kind of useless. I wish on the Elite, at least, the USB-C ports were faster. Oh my God, this is actually pretty clever. Standard MX switch, 2-pin in the bottom. A little awkward to install, but actually you don't even need to remove screws, you just have to remove the front plate. As for the configurator, you access it from the main product page over here, and it's okay, but there's a lot to be desired. First of all, you have color options, but any selection is inclusive. So if you want the white enclosure, you have to deselect the black one. Let's choose our front panel next, and here everything is listed, including the models for the black enclosure. So for example, if I want the walnut, you can still see the metal underneath is going to be black. So if you are trying to play around with certain color schemes, for example, like pixel glass that has a black border, and like choosing the black IO, for example, that might be a fun way to customize the black and white enclosure. And my first critique is that anytime there's something that's out of stock, it doesn't tell you when it's going to come back in stock. It doesn't say like, hey, check back tomorrow. And you cannot deselect the default 3D Y airflow panel. For example, if I want the glass for the white pixel glass, I cannot deselect that one. So the case comes stock, and then everything you add are extras. So I cannot save money by deselecting what's on there by default, which is kind of annoying. For example, choosing a different motherboard tray, I cannot deselect the one that's included by default. So I'm going to have some metal waste, because otherwise what's the point of me getting a second motherboard tray if I'm going to be wasting the one that's included. For the power supply shroud, exactly the same idea. For example, if I want to go with a black power supply shroud, I cannot deselect the one that's included by default. And so by the time you add all these accessories, you're going to have a bunch of different panels that are going to be just, you know, wasted and on the sidelines. Same thing with the IO. If I'm trying to go after the whole black and white scheme on the interior and exterior, I cannot deselect the white one. And again, out of stock elements don't tell me when they will be in stock. There are lots of side panel options, which is cool. But for example, if I want a solid side panel, just for less of a showcase element and maybe highlight the front as my showcase piece for the enclosure, I cannot deselect the glass. So I'm paying $15 for a solid side panel, but I also have a glass panel included by default. I really like this cold air intake kit for the side that gives you installation of 3 fans. Unfortunately, and this is something that they have to address, is that this side panel is not compatible with the short and compact power supply shroud on the interior. And yet it doesn't tell me that they're not compatible. So that's kind of an issue. Even the visuals, it almost, you know, you can clearly see that the compact power supply shroud is right behind the intake, but they don't simply fit. There's also a minor compatibility issue with the RGB Flow panel, because the IO on any non-X enclosure doesn't have the cutout for your 5-volt RGB cable there, and it doesn't tell you that. You know, you just get the panel and you have to figure out how to route the cable yourself. And by the end of the build summary, my issue here is that you don't get any discounts for the parts you're not going to be using by the parts you're going to replacing them with. So if Corsair would have done the configurator way differently by offering us a very stock bare bones frame and letting us customize the front panel, the IO, the side panels, and then let's say if the frame costs $50 and then all these other extra modules cost extra, that makes way more sense instead of spending $100 on enclosure, $100 on different panels, and by the end you're just gonna have so much additional metal and e-waste that you're not using because you bought these other extra modules to replace them with. And normally how these things work is that obviously Corsair knows how many, you know, pixel front panels in white they've sold and how they have to kind of adjust the stock and inventory and where they should pool additional resources for, let's say, more options. But that is like long-term thinking and planning, because right now what's going to be the most important thing for Corsair is to see how popular this concept is, and I hope they're going to revise the strategy of not selling us a case plus all these modules, but selling us a bare bones version in the configurator, while still offering like standard 4000X and D options as stock without the need to go into the configurator. But I will give them credit. The pixel glass looks amazing. The wood, especially with the swirls and that wavy effect, is awesome. I would love to see more like it. The standard north strips are decently built. I did have a few screws that were loose. I had to tighten them myself. I wish Corsair would introduce a little bit of community engagement with these panels, like voting, see which front panel designs people love the most, and those can come out sooner, which interesting other ideas people are really eager to see for, let's say, for example, for the side panel mount. I love the ability to mount 3 120mm fans as the base, but that introduces the compatibility issue with the power supply shroud. And I mean, that's kind of a problem when you don't think about those two things working together. But in general, I think we're on the right track when it comes to the modular elements, especially because the baseline Frame 4000 is a good mid tower. And so everything that you add on top of it is kind of like an extra value add, just as long as the price is right. And right now, it isn't. Let me know if you agree. I'm Dmitry. I'll talk to you in the next video.